have been reported in British Columbia long before the Europeans ever came to the North American continent. The various First Nations have had different names for it. They have different beliefs and different customs surrounding it, what the animal is and what it's capable of. But all in all, when you talk to them and piece together what they're describing, it becomes a pretty uniform subject. It's basically described as a hair-covered ape-like creature, and of course, different various First Nations had different various supernatural beliefs of what this animal was capable of and what you could expect from it, and some of it was not very good. As John Green said earlier, it was Caucasian misunderstandings of being told the early stories that led to the belief that they were describing First Nations people with long hair on the head, and that's all. Okay, as you can see, various First Nation masks depicting what we now call the Sasquatch. Like this excellent mask that was made by a member of the Chehalis Reserve in the 1930s. You can now see this mask on display in the Vancouver Museum in Vancouver, British Columbia. Totem poles all up and down from the Haida and the Chehalis to the, all up and down the coast, Washington, Oregon, California, all depicting things like the Sonic, which was the wild woman of the woods. You can always tell we're talking about the Sonic because she usually has whistling lips. Next. And of course, the koala mask portraying the Bukwas, which is supposed to be the male of the species. Some people prefer the Sonic as the female, and Bukwas is the male. And thus the legends went on. Like I said, different First Nations, different beliefs, but they all were rather talking about the same thing. And of course, it took years to figure that out. Now, you probably remember seeing this photograph. This is a photograph taken at Ruby Creek of the Chapman House in 1955, I believe it was. It was filmed. The incident happened in 1941. Next. And of course, John Green took this picture in 1955 of the house after it had been long abandoned for about 14 years. I want you to take special note of the snow patterns there on the mountains, because this property has changed quite a bit since then. It's now a different family owns it. A charming couple named Schneider own the property next. That's what the property looks like today. Also the same two trees, only they're of course much taller. The house today, there's no trace of it. It's gone. I couldn't even find a rusty nail. But the new house where the Schneiders live has been built on the other side. Mr. Schneider, charming gentleman, tomorrow, on Sunday, if people want to go out and actually visit the Chapman site, he has volunteered to leave the gate open, and anyone who wants to come and take a few pictures of it, one of these historical sites of one of the classic cases, I'll be happy to take you there, so you can all come and see for yourself what the place looks like today. Next. Now, this is a picture taken just a year or so ago by Barry Blount, showing the two trees and the house as it looks today. This was taken 2 years ago. Now, would you go back a couple to the 1955 one? Okay. Notice the pattern on the snow. Go forward. Right there. And it almost looks exactly the same. It's 40 years later, and it's still the same. Bill here did something absolutely excellent. He was wondering what would look like if the Chapman House was still there today, and what the place would look like since it's completely gone. So what he did was he took Barry Blount's here photo from 2009, John Green's photo from 1955, and superimposed them together, lining up the mountains perfectly so you would get an idea where the house was today. Do it. Should work. Okay. See the way the mountains line up? 1955, 2009. The property saying, even the snow looks like it hasn't changed. It's been 40 years. That's incredible. We know these are the same two trees because there are the rare trees that are actually Siamese twin trees where you get one trunk and two stems coming out. They're both that. Yeah, both those trees are like that. And you can see they both have two stems in them now today, and they did in 1955. You know, and again, when we do it, you're going to mess it up. There we go. Now you can just hit the done. And of course, this is what it would look like if the house was still there today and it was still standing. That's the position. The trees would actually be growing over it right now. They have grown that much, but that's what the house would look like if it was still there today. And of course, when you go there, you'll find nothing. All right, next one. Sasquatch Inn, a famous site. Some of you were eating there yesterday, the day before. It's hell of a nice place. They recently redid the outside, thank God, because I had fully resigned myself to the possibility of driving by there one morning and seeing a dark pile of ashes. Because the old building was rather ugly. I still remember coming out and watching the bats come out of the wall every time the sun went down. So, you know, but it's kind of a landmark around here, and hopefully it'll be around for a very, very, very long time yet. Go ahead. The Chehalis Reserve. This is where the term Sasquatch came from. This is their symbol. You'll find that sign just by the bridge by the creek just outside the Chehalis Reserve. It's really quite something. They do it. Next picture. And this man, J.W. Burns, was directly responsible for the name Sasquatch being adopted by the non-native community in Canada. Because he wrote some stories for Maclean's magazine, and one particular story came out on April Fool's Day, believe it or not, 1929, entitled "Introducing BC's Hairy Giants." And that's that's where the word Sasquatch was first let out to the non-native community, and it's been known as Sasquatch in Canada ever since. Of course, our American friends south of the border had never heard of that, and when those tracks were found around Northern California in 1958, they gave the name Bigfoot, and that name has stuck there ever since. But, you know, we've always tended to, you look at it, Bigfoot's the American name, Sasquatch is the Canadian name for the same thing. Next. My three amigo pictures. That's Barry Blount, Bill here, and a guy named Curtis, who sort of like gives the tourist information in around Yale. No one had ever gone, as far as we could tell, to where Jacko, as you were listening about earlier, the creature that was captured in 1884 outside the LBC. No one had ever been to the site where this capture allegedly had happened, so we were curious and we thought we'd have a look. And it's rather tricky to get there because that railway line is only a single track, and you have to be careful because the line is still in use. So there's some spots there, if you're on there when the train's coming, you gotta really squeeze up against the wall. Fortunately, it didn't happen to us. This is where I believe, and most people agree with me, is where Jocko was found unconscious by the tracks. That tunnel in the background there, that's tunnel number 4. And in the article from the Victoria Times columnist described it was just as the train was approaching outside of tunnel number 4, they saw a figure unconscious in the tracks between the cliff and the tracks. And this area, quite frankly, fit the description in that old 1884 newspaper like you wouldn't believe. It was perfect. So I think this is where it happened. The only thing that bothered us was the original newspaper story said it was about 20 miles north of Yale. Well, it's not. It's about 20 miles north of Hope. It's only about maybe 5 miles from Yale. So that's tunnel number 4. And it's a very shallow tunnel. It only goes from like where I'm standing to the doors. And when you're approaching it, you almost have to really look at it before you realize there's a tunnel because it's all overgrown with trees and stuff, and you can see trees through it. You don't even realize the tunnel's there until you're almost right on top of it. Next. Same picture, it's a little sunnier. Go ahead. That's close up to the tunnel. Tunnel number 4. Again, tomorrow, if anyone wishes to go and visit the spot where Jocko was captured in 1884, allegedly, and would like to see this site for himself, I'll be more than happy to show you where it is. Just bring your hiking boots, and if I say get up against the wall to avoid a train, move. All right. Next. Okay, now we're getting into what I really wanted to talk about, recent investigations and sighting reports. I've put together a few of the ones I think are more interesting and probably more reliable. This lady and her young child, her husband, who's in the photograph, was not involved in the incident. We're driving home on Half Moon Bay, which is just north of Gibson's on the Sunshine Coast, in March of 2005. She has a store in Gibson, or she did then, and which goes by the name of Hot Tamales. And when I went to interview her, I thought it was an Italian restaurant. Turned out to be an adult store for women. I was thinking the whole time, boy, am I ever glad Randy never saw me go out into this place. But she was driving home like she always did, because her house is in Half Moon Bay and her store was in Gibson's, and it's only like a 15-minute. Or she had done it 1,000 times before, and it was just getting, past dusk, just getting dark. She had her high beams on, and she saw a figure come out of the dense bush on the right-hand side of the road, walk across it about 5 steps, and the amazing thing was it was almost like it disappeared. She didn't see it go into the trees, and it was like gone. She couldn't figure that out. So when she called, she actually called John Green first, who passed the information on to me, and I contacted her. And 3 days later, I went to investigate the incident where it happened. And this is where she's pointing, is where the thing came down. And at the time, you could still see a trail where something had come out from behind that tree, past that mountain, and come out onto the road. The markings were still there, but there was nothing that I would call a clear, distinct footprint. Next. And close up, you could just see the trail where something came out of there. And this was just 3 days after the incident. Fortunately, we had a bit of a dry spell. It wasn't raining at the time. So I couldn't figure it out. But there were no tracks. There were a couple of money spots that had no tracks. But it's the way she said it, and across the road, it just sort of disappeared. That fascinated me, and it was a little bit of a mystery until I looked at the other side of the road. Next one. That's where it disappeared. That's where she's pointing, on the other side of the road, on the west side. The ocean's like only 2 kilometers from this spot. And where she's pointing, there's actually about a 9-foot drop. It's not a little ditch or anything. That's like a 9-foot drop. So this thing just came out across the road and didn't even slow down. Down, gone. Next one. And that's where it disappeared too. That's 9 feet down, and it went in through there, like between those trees, like a goalpost, and of course she never saw it again. And when I went to interview her, she actually broke it down, because it affected her that much, because growing up, in that area, she's heard Sasquatch stories all her life. She grew up with them, but she never took them seriously. She said, once you see something like that, the amazing things, it's equivalent to someone telling you about a rhinoceros, and no one believes that it's real until you see it yourself. And she says, you see something that's that big, and she just couldn't believe that something like that is still unknown. It's still not confirmed. It's not on the zoo. No one knows about it. It affected her that much. And the amazing thing is, the little girl who was in the car with her at the time, she hadn't seen anything, because the little girl didn't say anything. She didn't really ask. But the child, about 7 or 8 months later, when Bill and I were getting ready to do that documentary film, Bigfoot Reflections in Harrison, about 2 nights before we were starting to film that documentary, she phoned me and she said, guess what? What? Well, the little girl just asked me about the big monkey that crossed in front of our car a year ago. So the little girl had seen it, but she hadn't said anything. Yeah, well, recently there's been a pilot film for a possible new television series, and we decided to go back and talk to her again. And we were there, 4 months ago? December. Yeah, December. And we went over the whole thing again. Now her store is closed down, but her adult living store, she's operating out of her house now. It's a pretty big house. And the little girl is now a young teenager, and she told us all about it. And she basically echoed what her mother told me so many years before to the word. And there had been a rash of reports in this area before and after this. But it seems like things have quieted down a bit in that area now. But she still is completely memorized by that event, and she strikes me as very sincere. I like to think in 30 years of interviewing witnesses and stuff, and providing my own personal philosophy is stick to the facts and never deviate from the facts. Let them tell you the story in their own words. Don't try to lead them or anything like that. You get a sense that you can tell when someone is being truthful or someone is just pulling your leg or trying to tell you what they think they want you to hear. You know, that's why it's always important if you're interviewing witnesses never to ask leading questions, because before you know it, the witness is telling you what they think you want to hear rather than what it is they actually saw. Oh, yeah, I already did that. That's another fun. Bill was just reminded me for the longest time she didn't let the little girl go outside and play. Right, push the button. Okay. This is the most recent event that we have looked into. This young lady, who I will not name at her request, this incident happened 2 months ago, February the 8th, 2011, on the Silver Saget Road near Hope, British Columbia. This lady and her fiance, next slide, your feet, back one, your fiance there, they have bought a house in Hope and they're slowly renovating it, coming out on the weekends, doing a little work, going back Sunday night, and coming out the following weekend to do some more work. Well, they were taking a little bit of a break, so they decided to just take a run up Silver Saget Road to look at the scenery. Like, it's a beautiful road. It goes all the way down almost to Ross Lake, which is right on the border. It's about a nice 2-hour drive to the bush. Long history of reports and sightings on this road. And they had gone out to just beyond the 4-kilometer point, and we're in the process of turning around and coming back and passing the 4-kilometer point sign when she saw a figure walking up away from the road. What got her attention was the way it was moving its arms and its legs and how big it was from the car. And it was standing right about here beyond this tree. And to show you how dense everything is, that's your fiance standing there. Until I pointed out, you didn't realize he was standing there, did you? Yeah. But so what caught her attention was the way it was moving, because the arm swing seemed very pronounced, and the legs. And then she just saw it for a few moments and it disappeared. He didn't see it at this point. He started moving. He said, "What did you see? What did you see?" He said, a big hairy guy. You know, he gunned it up ahead a little bit, and just a little ways further down the road, there's kind of like an old trail off where there's an opening, and he just said he looked, and he caught the glimpse of something disappearing deep into the bush down this trail from the back, as it just happened to cross that point, because it kind of went away at an angle across this trail on the east side. And they got out and they looked around for a little while, but they never saw it again. They contacted me, and they contacted Jerry Matthews. And Jerry Matthews passed the information on to me, and I and Bill went out there the following weekend during a horrendously rainy day, trying to find evidence of tracks or something like that, but we didn't realize, I hadn't talked to the lady yet, so we didn't know if we were on the exact spots, we didn't find anything. But when I went and interviewed her with Jerry Matthews and Bill, Mary Blount came along, Mary would take the photographs. We had a real good look around, and we found on that trail where he said he saw something, what might be footprints, I can't really tell. But next slide. That was number one. Can anyone make that out? Is that clear enough? That is a bottle cap in the middle of it. Basically, it goes like that. Sorry, Bill. They're not very big. On average, about 11.5 inches long. But track number one was that one, and then there's track number two, the next one. They were in a straight line. That one's a little easier to see. The distance of the step between track number one and track number two was exactly 4.5 feet. That's a big step unless someone's running. But there's really, in my opinion, no clear indication of toe marks, but this was frozen ground. I think whatever made these tracks probably stepped there, or whomever made these tracks, stepped there when the ground was not frozen. And another cold snap came by, because when me and Bill were out there the first time, it was raining and warm. And it was cold this following week when we went out there again. And this moss had refroze. But then we went to track number 3. And the step from track number 2 to track number 3 was exactly 5 feet. Half a foot longer than the first. So that makes a stride of over 9 feet. No, I guess a guy could do that if he's running. But according to the witness, he said he never went up that far up on the trail. He said he didn't think it was his boots. There was nothing to indicate. But look at the width of the front of the track. That's a wide front. Bill pointed this out. Heel, and what kind of looks like could be indications of a mid-tarsal break or a mid-tarsal bend, as Jeff likes to call it now. You know, I don't know if these are tracks, but they're quite interesting to look at. And this is the most interesting, the most recent one I've looked into. That was just 2 months ago now. Okay. 2008 was a very busy year for us. We had a whole rash of this that's come to the forefront. 2008. What you're looking at here is a Google picture of Mount Archibald at Bridal Falls. There were 2 incidents that occurred here on June 18th and 19th, 2008 by 2 different witnesses. Basically, we're talking about 2 sightings by 2 different peoples on the same Forest Service road about a kilometer apart. Now, the first incident happened, I heard about it in quite an unusual way. The man who saw the thing told his wife, do not tell anybody, because he doesn't want anyone to know that there's that he saw a Sasquatch, or even think that he saw a Sasquatch. So he told her, don't tell anybody. She was in the truck with him. But she told a friend, who told her husband, who used to work at the mill I lived in, and he remembered me and what I do. So he came out there and said, you know, this lady said, and her husband saw a Sasquatch last week, and you know, and I said, well, does she want to talk to me about it? I think she will, but I don't think he will. I said, did she see it? She said, no, she didn't actually see it, because she was fiddling with CDs or something when it crossed the road. And I said, well, you know, that's not. Apparently she harassed her husband for a night or so, and then he finally relented and he agreed to talk to me. And I went and interviewed him at his home, and I went up to try to take a look at the area immediately after that. And it was a couple of days later that he agreed to take Bill and I and show us exactly where this had happened. Now, this first sighting here, that's the way the road bends. Don't change it. That's the way the road bends. That's Bridal Falls right there. That's Bridal Falls Creek. So this first is sometimes going to occur right around here. They were up there on the high, you know, viewing point, looking at the lights, doing what couples do up there. And they were coming down around 2:30 a.m. And she's fiddling with CDs or something, and he's geared down going real slow, because this is an incredible climb. Make sure if you ever go up this road, you have 4-wheel drive and it works and your brakes are good. And this thing just came up, crossed, and disappeared in the right. I mean, this road's not very, it's about as wide as this stage is from the wall to where it ends. You really have to be careful. And this thing just came up, crossed, and disappeared. And all she remembered is, he said, did you see him? Did you see that? And she goes, what are you talking about? He drove past the spot, just past where the creek was. He pulled over, and he asked her again if she saw it. And she said, no, what are you talking about? I said, you big hairy naked guy. Something to that effect. And she said, and she's the one that clicked 2 and 2 together and calmly said, did you say, are you saying we saw a Sasquatch? And he immediately replied, no, there's no such thing as Sasquatch. he didn't even bother. He said, no, there's no such thing as Sasquatch. As a matter of fact, to this point, he still will not say it's a Sasquatch. He says, I don't know what I saw. I can't think of what else it could be. But there's no such thing as a Sasquatch. He won't admit it himself. This is the guy who's done a lot of hunting and stuff. So Bill and I, he actually showed Bill and I where it occurred, and we found a spot as well. Yeah, that's a spot on the road. You see how narrow that road is. And Bill's actually standing on the path that the thing burrowed its way through the bushes on the right-hand side of the road. No, he's not mooning me in the camera. I'm just taking a picture of where the truck was. And it came out. Next one. Now you can see the line where something came out of the bush. Something came out of the bush. Now we went down there. Mount Archibald is a very steep grade. All right? It's the hill's basically on an angle like that. On one side of the hill, or one side of the road, you cross the road, there's a little ditch there, and then you're climbing again. Row of trees. Bill and I went down, we could see the line where something had come through the grass. And Bill and I, we had to go up and down sideways, grabbing on, trees and stuff most of this part, to avoid falling on our face going down and up this thing. This thing looked like whatever made these marks in the grass and the ferns, and it looked like it just went straight up. And that I found impressive, though. The ground in this area, the road, there's just no soft spot or anything where something could have made of mud, where something could have left a track, a clear, distinct print. That's what we were looking for. Next one. Now, Bill's pointing to the spot again. Next one. And this is the path it's a very thick bush on the other side where it starts going up the hill again. Something plowed through there. Right where the guy said he saw this thing. You could see it. We didn't make that. Something went through there. It's almost like a wall of bushes at this point. Something went through there. What is this? See, Bill's pointing to what looks like marks in the ground that could be where footfalls occurred, but there was nothing there to indicate a track. Okay? So that impressed us. And what especially impressed me was the main witness in this case, who still says, yeah, I saw it. I can't think what it could be but a Sasquatch, but there's no such thing as a Sasquatch. Sometimes people don't even believe their own eyes. That's fascinating. And she regrets very much filling around with the CDs, the tapes and stuff, because it was that split moment. I mean, it was that fast. Out across. It never even delayed or stalled. It just zip bang gone. And this is 2:30 in the morning. Who's going to be up there in a monkey suit at 2:30 in the morning walking up a hill full of old trees in front of a car? Disappear? I don't buy it. I don't buy it. Next one. Now, this young lady, Angela Ray, heard about the story, and she decided to come out there with Bill and I, and she was going to do a story on this sighting. We got a bit of coverage in the Chilliwack paper. We didn't like the final result of what she wrote, but reporters quite often they just scribble down notes and they would quote a lot of it. So she came out there and she wrote about this first encounter, and she came up with a story in the Chilliwack paper called "If You Go Into the Woods Today." Next slide. This young man read the article and said, "My God, that's the same place I saw something the following night." That's what he said. He said, and he told it. The only person he had told was his mother, because he still lives at home. And he likes to go, 4x4 in that truck. So he said he went up there at 10:30 at night, and at the time, Bill and I were thinking he was talking about the following night. And when we interviewed him out there at the spot, we realized this man is not talking about the following evening. His sighting actually occurred 4.5 hours before the one I just told you about. So this encounter preceded the other one by 4.5 hours. It occurred 10:30 p.m. on the 18th of June 2008, and the other one, midnight rolls by, 2:30 in the morning, 19th of June 2008. So this one actually happened first, and I telephoned after we interviewed him. I telephoned his mother and talked to her about it, and of course all she could tell me was how excited he was when he got home and how astounded it was on what he saw. He was going up the road rather than coming down like our previous witnesses. He went around the corner. Next slide. And he saw this thing with its hands up, leaning against that old growth nursing stump that's on the side of the road. And he said when his headlights illuminated the creature, it just looked, it sort of kind of glanced in his direction, and it scrambled up over top of the stump, didn't go around it to either side. It's almost like it suddenly panicked. Its feet, like very much like you see in the cartoons, scrambled up and over top of the stump, and it went down the hill, and he could hear it crashing as it went down the hill. And I went climbing down there when I went up there, and that's, I tell you, the man did what he said this thing did, he probably would have broken his back. Because it's on an angle like that, crashes with all kinds of garbage. Tree stumps, rocks, you name it. It's a steep fall. You're not careful, you can break an arm or leg easy. And he said that's what this thing did. He described it very, obviously, whatever it was, panicked when it saw his vehicle come down. And he was astounded by it too. Now, we can't say for certain if this is the same creature, but when you got two reports by two different witnesses who don't know about each other, half a kilometer apart within 4 hours on the same road, it's a fair assumption that it's two sides of the same animal. Can't say that for any 100% certainty, but it certainly argues for it. And it's one of the better ones that occurred in recent years, just because we have two separate incidents with two separate witnesses within a kilometer of each other on the same road, 4.5 hours apart. You know, common sense tells you, yeah, probably the same animal. Yeah. Okay, I'll rush it. And next one. And Bill looked at the stump. There were kind of like scrape marks on that stump, as I recall, but nothing that we could determine either came from them or a bear or something else that may have been scratching on it. But it's still there, and he was quite emphatic about what he saw. Next one. Now, as I said, that was in June of 2008. There was actually another report in August of 2008. A young lady said at the bottom of this Bridal Falls Forest Service road, there's a golf course, and the young lady said, was talking to a man who said he saw something while playing golf, but I didn't follow up on it because no contact information was achieved, and I was not able to track him down. Now this man, Mark Gordon, is a hunter who was bear hunting up Ruby Creek Forest Service Road on a wide junction at the 5 kilometer point in September of 2008. He was out there in the early hours of the morning. He was bear hunting. He was just walking slowly down the road with a .30-06 rifle, and he was caught out of the corner of his eye, something spiraling towards him, which he realized was a large rock spiraling towards him like a football sideways, if you know what I mean, spiraling towards him. The rock splashed into the bog, covered him with water, and he just got a glimpse of something taking off, moving away, just inside the tree line from where he had just passed. And he said he could see glimpses of it and hear it moving away around the outside of the bog through the thick bush. And he didn't shoot at it. You know, he didn't try to take a shot at it. And he was rather amazed. He didn't think it was that big. But later on, when they were mucking it around, Bill, who was the first to go out there with him, and they were mucking around, this man, he was what, 6'1", 2? 6'4", and they could barely see his head above the rushes in this muddy bog area. And you can see how thick it is. Next slide. So Bill took this picture of the road. You see how thick that bush is on either side. And just ahead there where that wet spot is where the rock came splashing down. Right there you see what the opening is. Next one. That's the bog, and you see like a tree, uprooted tree there with a root system. Later on I'll get into that. That's where we found tracks. Alright. Now next one. That's where it hit. And first of all, he contacted Jerry Matthews. Jerry Matthews contacted Bill. Bill went out, met the man at the site, told me about it. I went out there. We had a look around. Went out there with a young lady who brought a dog along, which annoyed me to no end. When looking around there, we found the tracks. The witness had no idea they were there. And he never saw the tracks we found. Went up there again, but I took photographs of the tracks at the time, but it was getting dark and they were filled with water, but he says, oh, there's nothing but one big bog. Went out there the next day with Barry Blount, because Barry's very good with photography. He took a picture of the track, this one. Took a picture of that one. A little bit of shadow, you can't see the track very well, but you'll see good in the next picture, which was taken by, you can see it there, right? Yeah. The track is right there. 5 toes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Spread out, grasping the ground as the thing moved. Okay, now I have to point out more important, never saw these tracks. You never knew they were there. We went out there the day after, we took Barry out to photograph the tracks. Bill took this picture. We waited a couple days. We wanted to get it to dry out a little bit before we tried casting it. Because trying to cast a footprint in this stuff, it usually never works, because this is not mud or dirt. This is layer upon layer of rotting leaves, grass, ferns. It's bog debris. It stinks in there. Skunk cabbage all over the place. Okay, next one. A little better there. That's my hand. Bill's picture. Next one. And, you know, it dried out pretty good, so we decided to take a chance and cast it. That's what I did. Next one. Oh, that's a good one on the toes. You can see the toes there. What I assume are toes. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I don't know. It appeared it was grasping the ground. Oh, Bill snapped that as a, okay, go ahead. Bill snapped that at me coming out. You can see how thick that stuff is in there. Coming out with the cast that we let it dry. And this one. Now, that's just, you know, another reasonable witness, a hunter, wasn't really seeking publicity, told us about it. Told us about a possible sighting. He wouldn't say it was a Sasquatch, though he didn't know what else it could be. Follow-up investigation. He went back out there himself and was mucking around in brand new hunting boots and stuff in the bog trying to find the rock, which he couldn't find. He wanted to prove it. And myself, Jerry Matthews, Barry Blount went out there. We found the rock. And, you know, he had it out right there. He said, oh yeah, there's the rock. He said, no, that's not the rock. Because the rock we found was kind of more like perfectly round, like a cannonball. I said, no, what was thrown at me was more elongated, pointed at the ends. So you got the wrong rock. So we were mucking around in the mud there trying to dig out whatever this mysterious rock was. We never did find it. And, you know, he never knew there were tracks. We found the tracks. No, we cast them. Never do it. So it kind of backed up his story. What else could it be if it wasn't a Sasquatch? The only other one possibility is some guy is running around out there barefoot throwing rocks at hunters with her 6'4" with carrying 30-06 high-powered rifles. No, not really. Probably good that he's over that. Now this gentleman, Burns Road, this was also November 2008. I have these signs on my vehicle doors. I know you said I had a Land Rover for years with signs on it and another vehicle with signs on it. I was just, you know, looking around, checking out the forestry roads. Came down. He came up beside me and he started asking me a bunch of questions what I do, which is not unusual, it happens all the time. And he said, you know, after he was convinced I was crazy, I suppose. And he said, I was going home. Okay, I'll tell you, I was going home, it was 1:30 in the morning, the damn thing was on the left-hand side of the road. So it was time to say, tell me about it. So he did. So we went down and he took me, and we were only a couple kilometers away, and he was just driving home, 2:30 in the morning. 2 houses down from where he is in this neighborhood, which is one of those rural neighborhoods where they've actually built houses right in the trees. You know, there's lots of space and trees in between the properties. Next one. And he's saying, he's standing there where he saw the thing. And he said it was standing in the ditch, and he said it was slightly taller than he is, and he's about 5'11". But he didn't slow down, he just drove by. didn't even slow down. He got almost to his drive before he thought, what the hell was that? And he looked back and he drove in and he got out of his car, and that's when he said he heard sort of like when he called a half bark, half cry being noise, but he has no idea what he saw actually made the noise. It's just something he heard. And he only got like, looks at the next one, which was rather unusual because I don't know if you can see it here, but right in front of the property where the thing was seen, standing in the ditch there's a sign above the driveway. It says Bigfoot. So another rash of sightings that happened in 2008, but by what I consider credible people, could go in more detail. Tom here, rush me along. Okay, next one. This young lady, 2009, heading home from Langley on Route 20 as it approaches 16, something crossed the highway in front of her car. She has no idea what it was. She just said it was very big, very hairy. Now, I go to this area. I took Jerry Matthews with me. We went out. We had a look around. Could it have been a Sasquatch? This is not an area I normally suspect. What next one? Suspect one, you know, because it's a highway. There's houses, but there is a lot of trees in between the houses. And we're actually only like about 5 kilometers above Zero Avenue here on the American border, Washington border. Next one. But she said it was pitch dark and it crossed on an angle. She saw it from the back, and she answered all the questions, and she wanted me to tell her what it was because she didn't want to, you know, consider that it could be a Sasquatch. You know, she said, could it be a guy in a big fur coat or something like that? I said, well, you tell me how big it was. I mean, he was big, real big. So she drew me a little sketch from the back, and this is basically what she's describing. You know, and we get that all the time. People describing things like this, drawing their little sketches, or describing something that was absolutely, you know, you think either they're totally mistaken, they're making it up, or they've seen and encountered something unusual that bothers them for a very long time. That's the thing that really impresses me. It's the witness, quite frankly, is you know, they want you to tell them what they saw. Because in their own minds, they quite often can't accept it. Like my first witness is on Bridal Falls Service Road. He doesn't want to listen, he doesn't want to talk to anybody else. And he still will say, no, it was not a Sasquatch. But you know, you see tracks and stuff, like this coyote track Bill and I run across. We run across these tracks all the time. We go all over the place. Next one. Cougar tracks, mountain lion tracks, we know most tracks when we see them. These appeared to be the tracks of our vehicle after we had passed. And then we went down and cooked our lunch right there 10 feet off the road, and maybe that would be a good idea. That's what we did. Next one. Same cougar track. That's a big cat. I mean, that's with the tire of the, you know, with the tire on the Polaris Ranger. You can see the size of the pug marks of that cat. So, but we never saw it. But I'm sure it saw us. Okay, black bear tracks, we've seen more than we can count. We've seen black bears all over the place. We've seen grizzlies too. Next one. Very large grizzly prints like that one, which is 8 inches long. That's just up American Creek Forest Service Road, which is only 30 minutes from here. Anyone tells you there's no grizzlies here around Lake Harrison, doesn't know what they're talking about. Yes, there are, especially higher up. Alright, next one. And of course, the scenery here is absolutely fantastic. You won't believe it. If you can get out when it's not raining, you'll enjoy it. It makes it all worth it. Wow, that's about 30 kilometers up Harrison Lake on Record Ridge on the right. Next one. Dormant volcano, the caldera. Hopefully it will never erupt in our lifetime. Next one. The slide on Lake Chehalis. That was a very good route to get into the bush to look for evidence of the Sasquatch. It used to be a big circle to connect the Mystery Valley, which would connect to the west side of Harrison Lake. But this part of the mountain came down in 2007, took out the campground, and it is now blocked. They do not plan to reopen it because the mountain is considered unstable. Next one. And of course, scenery like this we see all the time. That's Sunshine Valley. All right. Yeah, beautiful, but there's nothing better in the backwoods of British Columbia. If you can get into them, even if you have no interest in the Sasquatch at all, which I know is not the case in this room today, everyone is, but if you just got there, it's worth it. That's be effective to join there. Okay. things like this, you know, Harrison Hot Springs is probably the only place here that's anything like the towns in Northern California and Oregon where Bigfoot is everywhere. But the Sasquatch here, like I just read to you, the Harrison project with the statue, we've been concerned that, you know, the Sasquatch image here in town has been taking a beating in the last few years. All the campgrounds have changed their name from Bigfoot from Sasquatch to other things. And this sign was at the interest of town for many years. It was taken down 2 years ago to repaint, and they just never bothered to put it back, and happened to do so. But, you know, it's like I said, you know, stick to the facts, never deviate from the facts, listen to what they're telling you, and don't go anywhere without a camera. Never. All right? Thank you very much.